So thank you so much, Gayatri, for coming in my show. Thank you so much. And so Gayatri Vartak Madkekar, I mean, you have worn so many different hats, it will actually take some time for me to, give a proper introduction of you. So you actually started off as a professional badminton player, right? And you were a top 100 singles badminton player at an international level. You also represented India at a prestigious Uber Cup, and you were also the sub-junior national champion. So that really speaks a lot about you as a player, of course. And okay, not only that, you were also a state-level swimmer. And after 10 years, a decade-long career in badminton, you pursued your master's in psychology from Pune University, right? And and after that, you co-founded Samiksha Sports along with your colleague Janki. And so just when it started taking it off, on a good note, I think that's when you went to UK to pursue MSc in psychology of sports and exercise. Then after coming back, you and Janki actually became the first sports psychologist to be recognized by the British Psychological Society, right? So that it's itself a big thing again. Okay, I cannot forget one thing. When you actually did your master's in psychology, you were a rank holder also there, right? So, yeah, so that's really a big thing. And today you have got office in Pune, Mumbai, and Bangalore, and you have served close to 3,000 athletes all across the country, and you are associated with BCCI. Then your Prakash Padukone Badminton Academy, then your Army Sports Institute, Virat Kohli Foundation, and yeah, the list will go on. But so that's so it's really great to have you. Just to quickly touch upon it, because you started off as a badminton player, right? As a professional badminton player, and then you took up your interest that you had around sports psychology. So how did it actually evolve? I mean, did you already had some interest around sports psychology before you started picking up your racket, or started playing professional badminton, so to say, or it just evolved over time? You just thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. How did it actually start, the whole process?
Yeah, so I started playing badminton, and through my badminton career, I had the honor and privilege of working with Bam sir, as we fondly called him. And he was like a mentor to me as I grew up. I did a lot of mental training with him since I was 13, 14, and he continued to be my guide, whether it was while I was playing or for sports psychology. I got introduced to the concept of something like mind training very young. But I must say that that's not where it sort of attracted me. I took a very different route. Initially, when I started traveling for tournaments and stuff like that, I realized how important the mind was, right?
True, yeah.
So, for example, you could be physically fit and technically very sound, and you may be in great form, and you could feel excellent the day before, but you're not sometimes able to replicate the same performance on court on
True.
the next day, and
Yes.
Nothing is really changed physically. When you dig deeper to that, you realize that it's your mind that thinks differently, and that's what makes all the difference. So my curiosity about psychology in sport started maybe when I was 15, 16, when I started to understand a lot more, and I started to read a lot at that time. However, the very reason why I went to BAMSA was not sports psychology. It was, he would guide students to do UPSC exams and, write other competitive exams. So I actually went there.
Really? Okay.
That idea, and sports psychology with him just sort of happened. Maybe it was just to be like that, right? I always wanted to do UPSC. My parents wanted me to do a competitive exam. As I grew up, of course, sport being a preference, and because I played it at that level, it was often very hard to do your graduate level studies or master's level studies with an intense pursuit towards it. So
True.
what naturally happened was that I kept playing, and only after I actually got injured and I had to take a compulsory layoff, I thought, okay, now is the time to do masters, and what could it be? So again, I went and met Bamsar, and Bamsar said to me that, you like psychology. Psychology is a subject you can do it at UPSC. So why don't you just study psychology?
Okay. True.
So it really started like that. So yes, I did have a lot of interest in sports psychology, but I had not really thought of it as a career.
Okay.
And when I started to do my first master's in psychology, I still remember it wasn't easy. I wasn't used to sitting in class for long, understanding
Yes.
theory, and you're just not used to the whole process of
all
the
this Sigmund
system.
Freud and all that.
Right. So I think in the beginning there were certain hiccups, but sport teaches you a lot. It teaches you how to achieve your goals, align yourself to it, work hard, discipline you to and your mind too. So all sort of worked for me, and in 1 year, I could see the parallels of what I was learning and how it applied to my own sport.
True.
And when that started happening, I thought, okay, I've gone through this process myself. I have learned the theory of it, and now maybe I understand this better. And then I suddenly realized that nothing like sports psychology by itself existed in India at that time. So
very true. Yes, that's true. Yeah.
When many people were practicing as psychologists, or also in the field of sport, but I don't think they were specialized into sports psychology. And incidentally, that year, I also met Janki, again, because of Bamsar. We both went to Bamsar as we played, and Bamsar was also Janki's family friend. So, because of him, we got introduced to each other. And we realized that we wanted to do the same thing. And it sort of took off in 2011 sometime. Now it's been 10 good years of doing sports psychology. So even though I think, to sum this up, even though it may have started in a very vague manner, I think deep within I understood it as a subject, and much more as an athlete. And I learned to value that aspect of sport with a lot of weightage to it. And I think that sort of drove me to be passionate about the field, and also to gain the experience that I have over the years.
True. I mean, since you are already an athlete, and then when you add psychology to it, you actually have gone through that yourself, and so that makes it all the more sense, relevance, and easier for you to understand, and also make other people understand, right? Now, Gayatri, one very important thing, of course, you played badminton at a time when maybe sports psychology in India and mental conditioning was not evolved, like you said, right? Don't you feel that now our players are a little bit, I don't know, it's just my instinct. We are better in handling pressure because during those times, I remember we losing matches that we should have won, be it cricket or any other sport, But now if you see our teams, even if it's a team sport like cricket or hockey, during crunch situation, during pressure situation, the odds are in favor of us during those matches. Do you feel that? I mean, is it also to do with sports psychology evolving and being a part of the system?
Yeah, I think, in the last decade or so, sports science has evolved massively in our country, and so has sports psychology, of course. When we began, people didn't know what we were doing. To be honest, I think most of the people I spoke to and said, okay, I'm going to do this, didn't even know what I was talking. Right? It
True,
was,
yeah.
what does that mean? So I think in that sense, we have come a long way. More people know about the field. And of course, we have more experts within that field now. So, I think it's fair to say that the field would have contributed to India's recent performance. However, I think it's still an underutilized domain as a whole. It's just that I think
Definitely,
I
yeah.
was very fortunate to have coaches like Prakash Padukone or Vimal Sir or
True, yeah.
Hemant Hadikar, who always spoke about the mental aspect of sport. And I think that is why maybe it was I could lay more emphasis on it 10 years ago. And like you're saying, maybe today people are laying the same amount of importance on it as maybe I did 10 years ago. But it would have been nicer to
True,
see
yeah.
more people do it and more people understand the science behind it.
Yeah, true. And also, when a sports person like you, who have already played the game, and when you actually do a thing like sports psychology, it definitely enhances the entire ecosystem. It's like a player being an administrator, right? He understands. For example, we had a sports minister who was a silver medalist at Olympics. He understands what he has already gone through the system, and then he can be in the shoes of that player. So I think it really helps you also, contributing to the same thing, right?
Definitely. I mean, reading theory and learning and having your own experiences of it are completely different things. And I think, marrying the two together is the best you can get in any
True.
field, right? So I think in that sense, it's definitely helped me. Also, I feel like because I've played at the elite level myself, it's much easier to sort of foresee what challenges that could potentially come up. And also work on those. So, that is a big advantage. I think Samiksha has had both Janki and I have played at an elite level, and I think definitely sport, having played sport and then having studied it is a definite advantage. However, I think the word of caution here is there is a difference between having played sport and having played elite sport.
True, that's true. Yeah. I mean, we all have played sport, right? At some level, yeah. True.
Yeah, so I think the elite is also what is the sort of distinguishing factor, because you've done it yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I've played a game of,
yes.
Maybe a game of cricket in my building, or maybe joined a club for a summer camp. It's much more than that. It's a lot of sacrifices.
Of course.
It's a lot of emotions. It's a lot of years into an investment into that you have made. So I think as a whole, the experience of playing elite level sport is massively different than playing sport
True.
or even
Definitely.
sport at maybe a club level or a slightly initial levels in the competitive pyramid.
Definitely. Now, see, I mean, at what level can a kid start mental training? Because of course there is no rule that it can only be started here. It's again a very subjective question at the start of maybe, but you will still have some kind of a feel that okay, so and so is age wherein the kid actually understands, not understands, so to say, there also has a fun element into the entire thing, right? So when do you actually inculcate that mental training into a young kid who is supposed to be taking professional athlete, like you might see?
Right. It's an interesting question, a question that we get very, very often, to be honest. But I think if a child is ready to do any form of physical fitness, he's ready to do mental training as well. Because I see it maybe just as important as physical fitness. If you do all your physical fitness, but you don't train your mind, you will always have that little bit margin where you can't perform. So you need to ensure that you're training your mind from an early age. Also, I think Samiksha's philosophy since the beginning has been to prepare rather than repair. So, we want athletes to start doing mental training very young, because, if you form faulty attitudes, faulty beliefs, it's often very hard to unlearn them and relearn new techniques, right? But if you have done this since the beginning, you get the right inputs, you develop yourself on a very strong foundation. which almost also doesn't let you fall beyond the level. So I think, to answer to that question very simply is, if you think you're capable of doing physical fitness or you're playing at any competitive level, you must do your mental training.
True. Yeah, that's well said actually. And also, again, I mean, a lot of coaches that I've met, it might not apply to you, but generally I'm saying a lot of the coaches said that, say, for example, in tennis, only the top 100 players really make it big, right? In terms of money or surviving, survival in the circuit and whatever. The rest of it, guys who are outside 100, they struggle or maybe come out of tens, whatever. But what really remains with them is life skill, right? So I guess when a kid goes through the mental training, it's not, I mean, we all know that everybody cannot be a professional at the end of the day, but it still remains there, inculcated in his mind, in his or her mind, that, so and so mental training happened, and then it's kind of a condition that remains there in the brain, I guess, right? That also helps in some way.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the skills that you learn out of sport become second nature to you. And which is why it's so important. It's not just skills. At least at Samiksha, we teach you skills which are going to definitely reflect off the field, off the court, off the ground. It's not restricted to your sport only. Of course, the goal is sport, but it definitely translates into other areas of life. And a simple thing like, if you feel apprehensive before a match, or you're anxious before a match, it's most likely that if there is an important exam, you will still feel the same emotions.
True. Yes.
And if you have learned how to manage those emotions on the court, on the field, then you'll most likely know how to manage them in the exam hall too. So yeah, what you're saying is absolutely right. Also, like simple things like, athletes set goals, again, that becomes second nature. Every time you think about life outside sport, the first thing you think about is goals.
True, yes.
Okay. So yeah, spot on, I think.
I think that's right. True.
Outside of.
Yes. So you, of course, handle different athletes from different sports discipline, right? So just giving you a simple example here, maybe as an example. Now, for example, you've got a tennis player, okay, who is, say, for example, he has to go through a pressure situation wherein he is down a break, for example, on his serve, right? That's a pressure situation for him because he has to hold his serve. That's one situation. Second situation is a shooter, for example. For him, every small point counts because we know how competitive shooting has become. Every mile point matters, whether he's first, second, or even 10th. So how in this two situation do you have different training methods for these two separate athletes, for example, say for this tennis player, professional tennis player, and this shooting player who's also professional, shooter for yeah.
So I think the answer to that question is yes. And how, I'll just throw more light on it. So for example, if you're shooting, right, it's a game where you need to be composed throughout your match. You cannot afford to be sort of emotive about your emotion.
True.
Yeah, you can't feel frustrated and throw your weapon, for example, or kick something. All of that minute change in the way you think is going to affect your heart rate. That heart rate is going to affect your muscles and your breathing and so on and so forth, right? So in a sport like, in precision sports like shooting and archery, I think you don't have that leeway to be emotive about your emotions, really. So it's very different from something like a tennis where, you need sometimes to have that aggressive, positive body language, and that can help you. So I think in that sense, every sport is different. Every sport has different challenges. Like something like a chess is even more different, right? So
true, yeah.
I would say that yes, there are some things that are common across sports, but every sport has a particular thing which is specific to them, skills that are specific to them, and that obviously is something that we work on. Where I come to the next bit, that just as much as it's important to learn theory, it's also more important to know about the sport. because you have to know what the athlete is saying. You can't just sit there. Like when you talk to me right now, and even if I've not played tennis, and when you say you're a breakdown on serve,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying, because it's going to
True.
cost you a game. You're going to have your opponent have that advantage throughout that set.
Yeah.
So, but if I didn't understand this concept, then as a psychologist, I've already failed because I don't know what you're going through.
True. Yes.
So, it's also important to understand what the
Understand.
athlete.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah. Yeah. Again, coming to the pressure situation now, an athlete goes through different pressure situations, right? For example, if suppose a player is facing an opponent across the net, be it badminton or tennis, who is higher ranked than him, that pressure is one. That's a different kind of pressure because he knows he's playing a better player in terms of ranking. So, that way. Now, second situation is the same player playing another guy who is lesser ranked than him. That is also another pressure because he knows he has to win this match. He has everything to lose, right? So, does it really affect your, mental training given to him? I mean, are these two situations different, for you as a psychologist, sports psychologist, and do you have any different recipe for these two different situations?
I mean, those situations are very, very different. They're not the same by any stretch of imagination. And, pressure can be of anything. So for the elite athletes, it could be getting into the Fed Cup team or the Davis Cup team. When they're playing for the country as a team, in a Davis Cup tie or a Fed Cup tie, there is a different pressure. You have to also live up to the expectation of the team, of the country, of yourself. So obviously, like you're saying, there's higher ranked and lower ranked and so on and so forth. So pressures are different, and all of them have to be handled differently. And also, I think that it's not just being able to handle pressure differently. I think the way I see it is a lot of that can be done by having a strong foundation. Again, being able to teach players mental skills where they actually don't face so many tribulations later on, right? So it's important that you understand that mental training is more preventive. It's more like taking a vitamin C tablet than taking a crocin. And if you have that formula, you will be able to navigate yourself through those situations in a better manner.
True, yes. Rightly said. Now, I have done a bit of psychology, not as much as you, of course. I've studied psychology during my, graduation also. So I always heard about this different personality traits. That's a very common term that I always used to hear from my teachers and also from the books that I read. Now, we have seen different players through different ages. We have seen John McEnroe, Goran Ivanisevic, breaking rackets, throwing tantrums, and so that's to do with their personality, I guess. Their different personalities, their different personality traits that I have. So does it mean that they're mentally weak or maybe mentally not under control? Because why I'm saying is because the same John McEnroe, when he actually breaks the racket and comes back the next game, he actually plays better. So maybe he has vented out something. I'm not sure. So if you have to, if you have to handle a player like John McEnroe, will you let him be himself? Of course, you cannot let him be himself like that, but in a controlled manner, because that's again, no two individuals are the same, right? They've got different personalities, different personality traits. So how do you handle such players, who have got this habit, of throwing tantrums? Of course, it might not help them, but again, at the same time, it also helps them. I've seen many cases,
Well, first of all, there is no wrong way. You have to feel comfortable and you have to know under what circumstance you can perform, right? So, I don't say throwing rackets is right, but in the same breath, I don't think it was unhelpful for McEnroe. Maybe looking back in a lot of his interviews, he said
I'm not going to the ethical part. Of course, racket breaking is totally, it's not acceptable.
No, I think, going back, I mean, later on in his career, when he was interviewed multiple times, he also spoke about how he almost regrets doing all of that, right? There was this sawdust incident that happened once, then the rackets and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't think you really try and change the personality. You just try and understand what helps the player, right? Every player is different. That every player is unique is something that we have to recognize, and that is why psychology is not really one size fits all, and which is a mistake we make often. Secondly, I think someone like a Roger Federer, who would maybe when in his junior career do similar stuff. Okay, but
True. Yes. That's
yes,
a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah.
and he realized that he wanted to change the way he behaved on court because it was affecting his game in a negative manner. Okay, so he sort of restructured his mind. He went to a sports psychologist. He worked extensively with a sports psychologist, and we had the results to see. I mean, later on, his coaches also spoke about how that has really been a catalyst to his performance, right? So, he talks about how in every situation you could either be fire or ice, and both are important, but in the right quantities.
True. Yes. Yeah.
So I think, I think it's important that players realize what they really want out of themselves and how they want to be.
Yeah.
And what helps them. If they do that, like, you see a completely transformed Federer, and we all know who he is today, right? But that is not to take away any credit from a McEnroe or
Yes.
a
True.
Graham,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They were great in their own place as well. But it really depends upon what helps your sport and how you see yourself do it. You have a Nick who's so talented and who
Yeah.
does maybe similar things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll know whether changing him is actually helping him or not.
True.
Changing him and helping him just manage it effectively is helping him. But I think it's, as a psychologist, it'll come with a lot of experience of having worked with many athletes over years that will tell you that there isn't a fixed recipe really. You have to work yourself around with the athlete and make the athlete comfortable. Give him the choice to understand what could and couldn't be helpful, what are the pros and cons of different situations. And I think an aware athlete will understand and will make the changes where and how required.
True. So, I mean, in such a case, for example, I'm asking you from a very layman perspective, okay? Because I know how a coach, tennis coach, will work with a guy, right? He will work on his forehand, he will work on his backhand. Same with the case with badminton, the way you play, that thing. But as a psychologist, for example, what are the techniques that you would be using? For example, is it to do with some psychological testing? Of course, you'll do a lot of talking with the person to really know what's going on in his mind. So what kind of things you actually do? I'm asking you from very layman's perspective because, yeah.
So I think at Samiksha, we follow a very eclectic approach. It's not like we only do one thing and we continue to do it. So we also have been the pioneers of, using the Indian philosophy in combination with Western techniques, right? So for example, for years and maybe centuries, we have done yoga as a country, and we base ourselves strongly on it, on breathing techniques and on yoga. So we use a combination of yoga, we use a combination of different Western techniques. So whether it's cognitive behavior therapy or mindfulness as a concept. We use different skills like visualization, self-talk, goal setting. But it would be wrong to say that we use one. It is always a combination of a variety of things that, in our opinion, is the best fit for the athlete. And I think a good psychologist will have a repertoire of those different skills that they use.
True. Yeah. I mean, So I think meditation definitely plays a big role, right? Because, like you said, breathing, especially in a sport like shooting, for example, the way Abhinav Bindra would have controlled his breathing during those tense moments, a slight here and there would have missed the target, right? True.
Yeah, absolutely. I think breathing in anything for that matter is the most important thing. and so it is in sport. I think meditation is something that really helps people. It helped me. We have a lot of athletes, especially during this lockdown, talk about how it is helping them. But a lot of times it can be misunderstood. I think it's a concept which is very synonymously used with a lot of other things. And I think it's important for players to understand what form or strategies of meditation do they use. Just because I close my eyes and sit for 2 minutes, that may or may not be called meditation.
True, yeah.
Right? So in different philosophies, the different schools of thought will perceive the same situation differently. But I think, it has a lot of merits in itself as a technique. It's just that the athlete has to know why they're doing it and how is it best done to suit their need.
True. Yeah. True. I mean, he has to know his own self, right? Yeah, that's very important. So Samiksha, of course, has come a long way now. You have already handled 3,000 athletes, and you're only getting bigger. So what are your plans now? I mean, are you going to be present in more number of cities? So how is it like?
Well, Samiksha basically grew from two of us in an office to a team of psychologists early on in 2013, 2012, 2013, when we first did it. We were the only ones in India who had a sports psychology consultancy and a sports psychology team. That's something that we are very proud of. I'm extremely proud of the team that we have. Without them, I don't think we would have achieved even half of what we are today. So I think complete merit to everybody who's been a part of Samiksha, who's touched us, explicitly, implicitly, all those who have guided us through our journey. We've been very blessed to have many well-wishers. So I think when we began, like I said, not many people knew about sports psychology, and a lot of our work was around education and propagation of the concept of sports psychology.
Yeah. True. Because it itself is such a alien concept here in India, right? That you first have to make them understand that, okay, this is what sports psychology is all about. And then you actually can go to the next level, right? Yeah. True.
Yeah. So I think for the first couple of years, we just did all of that. And, I would definitely say that most athletes today at least know that there is something called mind training, which was completely absent a couple of years ago. They may not know how to do it, but they still know that there is something called mind training. I think another challenge that, we sort of overcame the last couple of years was the fact that in India, we don't have any regulatory body in sports psychology. So, it's very hard for people to understand who is a sports psychologist, who is this one person that we have to go to. So is a psychologist or a psychiatrist that's same as a sports psychologist.
True.
So I think, obviously there is a difference. Sports psychologists work on sport performance, on, holistic development, on life skills, on performance on and off the field. And you don't have to have a problem if you see a sports psychologist. You're perfectly healthy. You're just working around your emotions. Whereas that may not be true if you see a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist.
True. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think last couple of years, we've also done some work around that. And I think now for the next 10 years, our goal is going to be to have every athlete in India get access to mental training. That is our goal, right? So maybe the first 10 years was to establish the field for people to know. But I think we have moved on, and we can see how people already know about it. So for the next 10 years, it's clearly that we want all Indian athletes, no matter at what level they play, whether it's competitive, not competitive, they definitely need to have access to an expert, someone who is really qualified to be a sports psychologist. And I think all our efforts over the next few years will hopefully go into it and bear fruit in the years to come.
No, I'm sure it will. It has already bore fruit till now, so why not? You'll only get better. And more importantly, it's only going to help our athletes, right, to perform better. And because, uh, people say, I mean, almost everyone knows by now that no matter how good somebody's skills in particular discipline is, but if he is not mentally strong, between the years, then he loses more matches than he wins, right? So thank you so much, Gayatri. Thanks for enriching us with, first of all, with the concept of sports psychology, which is still, I feel, not yet fully understood. And so that's one thing that we really need the people to understand first. And the fact that you have come such a long way, and leaving behind the past wherein you were a badminton player, you have done so many things. So yeah, thanks a lot, Gayatri, and hopefully see you again soon, sometimes in the near future. And yeah, thanks, Gayatri.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure doing this. A lot of interesting questions. I think it's often helpful when someone understands the nitty-gritties of it to at least some level, because then we can have an engaging conversation.
True.
So some really good questions there. Appreciate them. Thank you for having us over, and
Thanks for coming in, actually.
and we look forward to doing more of this.
Sure, definitely, yeah. Thanks, Gayatri. Thank you so much, and good night. Yeah.